Welcome to the Pay Love Forward in Resilient Stories podcast. My name is Dr. Matthew Leavenworth, founder and director of Pay Love Forward. This series shares the stories of quiet builders of compassion, those who choose to live and lead with courageous authenticity. At Pay Love Forward, our mission is to build compassionate communities for the at-risk and underserved through mentorship. This podcast is one way we live out that mission. In this episode, I sat down with Russ Cleveland, who's running for the U.S. House of Representatives. And before long, his wife, Kate, joined us. What unfolded was not a political conversation, but a deeply human one. Russ and Kate shared how their story began long before policy or campaigns, when two 14-year-olds met on two boats off the coast of Washington and began a love story that would one day carry them through the unimaginable. We traced Russ's own journey from an injury that ended his military career and a cross-country bike ride for childhood health to co-founding Rocky Mountain Kids with his wife, and now to returning to his Montana roots with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying forward the lessons forged in both love and loss. We spoke about their daughter Madison, about her battle with leukemia, and about the devastation of the loss that has now become their purpose for fighting for those who are still fighting silent battles in a hospital room across our country as our nation turns its back on them. We talked about the research that saved my son Gentry's life, research that is now being cut. We talked about how it feels to raise an immunocompromised child in a world where preventable illness like measles and whooping cough are returning, and how families like ours are navigating dangers most people never have to think about. There's a campaign behind this, and the stakes are incredibly high in a political climate that is becoming more divisive by the day. But beneath all of that, this is a conversation about how our children become our why, even in pain and loss. This podcast is dedicated to four remarkable children, Cole, Madison, Allie, and my son Gentry. Your struggle was valiant, and your story will not be forgotten, even for those who did not make it to the other side. We will carry you with us always. I'm personally asking you to share this episode. Russ and Kate's story carries something that we cannot afford to lose. We must return humanity and compassion to politics. And that happens when we lift up the human story before we debate the political one.
Recording in progress.
All right. I think it pops up on your side, so we are officially live.
All right. Perfect.
Well, Russ, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I'm so excited to talk to you and learn from you and learn about your campaign.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was thinking maybe we could just kind of start with a description of what you're running for, for myself, for anybody who is, politically somewhat illiterate. But it's a pretty high stakes thing that you're setting out to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm running for U.S. House, Montana District 1. So those that don't know, Montana has 2 House seats for the federal level. And obviously every state has 2 Senate seats. House seats are based off of population. Senate seats are obviously every state gets 2. And so we just recently moved from 1 district at large in Montana to 2 split districts. And so now that district it's 16 counties on the west, but it kind of carves out Gallatin over there in the Bozeman area, swoops around Helena. So Helena's on the east side, so District 2. Then reaches up and grabs Glacier County with Browning and Ponderay and that area. So everything west of that to the Idaho border would fall into this district. And so I'm running to unseat current incumbent Ryan Zinke, who has had that seat for several terms, was prior Secretary of Interior.
Under Trump.
Yep. Trump loyalist, as most folks know. So
yeah, he certainly is that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're kind of the western half of the state. I mean, is that a good way to think about that? That we can divide this into west and east.
Yeah, I'd say western third. I think people forget how big eastern Montana is. They think Billings is eastern Montana, and it's. You still got a long ways to go till you hit the border once you hit Billings. So.
I mean, that's just like Montana, right? Like your neighbors, like you still have to drive 2 hours to get there. Like,
that's right.
Or if it's like a high school track team, it's like, oh, we're just gonna go. We're gonna go to play against Bozeman, but that's still 2 hours away.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's we're a small town in a big state, as we like to say.
And so, where are you located at?
I'm in St. Regis, Montana, so about as far west as you can get. We're about 30 minutes from the 40 minutes from the Idaho border.
Hmm. Okay.
Regis, kind of Montana looks like a face. Most people see the face, the nose on the west side. We're up right above the eyebrow in the forehead area there,
Okay.
St. Regis. So
So
northwest
kind of the
Montana.
panhandle of Idaho, then, yeah.
Yep,
Like that's what you're
exactly.
pretty close to.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
we're
cool.
about an hour from Coeur d'Alene Lake in Coeur d'Alene, so it's um, beautiful area over here. Lots of mountains, lots of trees. Lot different than your neck of the woods,
Yeah.
or lack of woods, I should say. So,
Well, we have, yeah, I mean, like Billings is super flat, you know what I mean? It's like, kind of this desert, arid sort of feel, but we also have the Beartooth Mountains, so, we can get pretty lost if we need to out here as well.
yeah, it's Montana. I coach football over here, and our boys made it to the second round of playoffs, and we had to travel all the way to Scobie, Montana, to play in the second round of playoffs. So you talk about, it's about as far west as you can get to about as far northeast as you can get,
Yeah.
and it gives you perspective on how big our state really is
So
here.
how long of a drive was that?
We broke it into basically 2 full days.
A multi-day drive to get to the other side of the
Yeah,
state.
it
Yeah.
was, it was 2 nights on the road and 2 days driving, and so I think the total trip, on a bus was somewhere around 15, 16 hours, something
Hmm.
like that. So it was a lot of a
That's
lot of driving
crazy.
to get our butts kicked and have to turn around and do it all over again the other way. So
But you made it to the playoffs, and it's your boys, it's your sons that
yeah,
are.
my oldest son Nathan is a junior, and so if all goes well with this campaign, unfortunately, I probably won't be able to coach next year. So
Yeah.
it was
Hmm.
important for me to do at least one more year. It was tough with some of the campaign stuff going on to give both the time they needed, but as you know, you can't replace moments like that with your kids, and
Hmm.
so it was important for me to do as much as I could. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, you've got a big family, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. We've got basketball team and a bench, so we're you know including Madison, which we'll talk about, I'm sure.
Uh-huh.
We have seven total, and so we're a blended family. We're a mixture of a couple kids from my wife's previous marriage, four together, and then one that we took guardianship over. That was an athlete of my wife and I's, actually, here in St. Regis.
Oh, that's
And
really cool. Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, how did that
yeah,
unfold?
so we were. My wife coaches women's basketball,
Hmm.
and I do track and football. And this gal, Jamie is her name, was a freshman and um, had a rough family environment. Decided to leave her home, abusive parents,
Hmm.
um, and was kind of couch surfing, which is actually not uncommon in Montana, especially rural communities. We are one of the states with the highest uh, percentage of unaccompanied minors. And so
Hmm.
St. Regis is one of those schools that has a pretty high percentage of unaccompanied minors. And so the school reached out to us. We're my wife's on the school board, and so is my dad. But also just being coaches, they said, hey, would you be able to just take in Jamie for a little while we figure out what's going on here? And and so initially we just brought her in just to give her a
Hmm.
safe place to stay.
Yeah, you were the couch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and
temporarily at
and
least, but.
we had a guest room. She had her own bedroom.
Hmm.
It was one of those things, and so we brought her in and didn't realize the hole that we uh, had with the passing of Madison, and she was an oldest child in her family unit. Madison was our oldest child that had passed, and so it was this weird, like, all of a sudden all of the you know interlock of kind of child relationships fell back in order,
Hmm.
and personality fit great.
Hmm.
Her everything just seemed like it just clicked, and so after a few months we're like, hey, she's welcome to stay here, um, and so she decided she wanted to stay, and we started talking to the courts about it. Well, about that same time, she opened up about the experiences pretty traumatic experiences she had as a kid, starting at the age of 5 up till at that time, I think she was 14 or 15 when she moved in with us. And obviously that escalated, got legal involved, child protective services involved, some court cases against mom and dad. They lost their rights. Stepdad, I guess it is. Stepdad is in prison for life now for some of the things that he did to her, and so she was able to, find some closure with those experiences and settle in with our family that gave her an opportunity for a better future. So, pretty awesome story.
Clearly, like zero things that are easy about that story you just told me, but also something that is healing about that as well. Like I can only imagine, because Madison passed away from leukemia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is
That's
something
right.
we're going to talk about in a little bit, but left, I'm sure, what is just a gaping hole in your family, like just a loss you never come back from. And in some respects, you can turn it into meaning, but then to have this other little girl come into your lives, like there's something just healing about that in some respect.
We didn't know it. It's one of those things that so we chose St. Regis. Well, I say we chose St. Regis. In some ways, I feel like St. Regis chose us. We were living in Colorado. My wife and I ran a childcare business in Colorado.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain Kids.
That's right. Yeah. We founded it in 2016 with a friend of ours, business partner of mine, Brennan was his name, who had been in the childcare industry for over 20 years. We met through pretty much my work at the bank. I was working what brought me to Colorado was part of a leadership program that I was recruited for. So I'll take a couple steps backwards. I had gotten out of the Navy, was pretty severely injured in the Navy. I broke my back in 3 places, and realized that my aspirations to kind of make a career out of the military were going to be limited. But during that recovery process, fell in love with health and wellness. And so when I got out, I finished my undergrad in nutrition, started doing personal training, became a master fitness trainer, and was training everyone from kids, youth, up to, stroke recovery patients, seniors, that kind of thing. And so really fell in love with it. My brother, who my parents growing up did foster care when I was about a freshman in high school, they started doing foster care, ended up adopting 2 of the foster kids that had come through. So my younger brother and sister are both adopted.
So you had kind of exposure to the level of need that's out there. If you are involved in the foster system, you know that there's so many kids out there who just need a home, who need hope.
It's so true. And I don't know the total count that my parents had fostered over the years, but I think it's upwards of 40 plus kids. And so some of them were 2 weeks, some of them were 6 months, some of them were years, so it just depends on situation and what mom and dad, kind of trouble they'd gotten into or what have you. And so long story short, Garrett, my younger brother, genetically had faced some weight issues growing up. And so I really became particularly interested in childhood obesity and what that does to, the lifespan of people, and not only just physically, but you talk about, bullying's a real thing. The insecurities are a real thing. It's like being a teenager is already hard. And then you add in some of those insecurities. And for me, at that time, I was like, man, this is really something that I'm really passionate about. And so at my tail end of my time in Nevada, which is where I finished my undergrad after getting out of the Navy.
I would imagine too, like fairly personal, right? Like you go through this traumatic injury in the Navy that totally dislocates you from the career path that you had envisioned for yourself. Like all of a sudden, that's not available to you any longer due to these injuries. And, whatever that recovery road was like must have been, really, really involved.
It was, yeah. For me, um, one of the issues that I'm campaigning on is veterans care and veterans benefits, because it took me so long to get the care that I needed, not only as a veteran, but when I was in the Navy. I was one of their only inspectors to get helicopters airborne again. I was a collateral duty inspector. I worked on aviation electronics, and so when we're in flight mode, it's like we got to get aircraft fixed, inspected, and back in the air. And I worked our mid check, and so we tend to do flight ops at nighttime. And so, long story short, whether that was the cause or not, I had been in a pretty severe accident, knew I had hurt myself pretty badly, but could not get the Navy to even do an MRI, any type of testing to see what was going on with my back. They wanted me back to work, and so it was 800 milligram Motrins, back to work, and take as many as you need to keep moving and get back after it. And so I actually had to go private, which is not easy to do on an E-Force pay, because you're barely making any money as it is. And
yeah, I mean, you have military insurance too, right? So it's not like that.
I had military insurance, but it doesn't cover private.
No, of course not. Yeah.
Yeah. So TRICARE, you got to go to the Navy hospital, and they're the ones saying no.
Yeah, they're not
we're not going to do testing. And so I had to go out of pocket to a hospital there in Virginia where I was stationed and say, hey, this is what's going on. Of course, this hospital's like, yeah, it sounds like you have something severe going on. Let's see what's going on. Did an MRI, found out I had basically crushed 3 vertebrae, blown 2 discs, and they're like, we can't believe you're still walking upright, let alone working. And so that created quite the shift in dynamics to get the treatment I needed from the Navy. They finally did it, and about a year of recovery after that. They gave me 2 options. One was surgery, which I really didn't want to do. And the other was a pretty intensive, physical therapy process that involved decompression and basically lifelong chronic pain. But it was like you'll have mobility still. So if you want to be active, this is the route you go. If you want to kind of to hang it up, then we can fuse the vertebrae and you'll have no torso mobility basically.
So 2 bad options. Two.
Yeah, not great options either. So anyways, that's what led me to the health and wellness field. Well, fast forward back to training in Reno at that time, and just got in studying nutrition and working with community nutrition programs, working as a trainer, really fell in love with childhood obesity and how to prevent some of that. So I started a fundraiser, a nonprofit that was called Pedal for Prevention. And that basically was raising money for, I don't know if have you heard of Alliance for a Healthier Generation?
I have not, no.
Yeah, so if you think of like school nutrition programs now, their job is to try and provide balanced, nutritious meals to kids. So you're talking carbs, protein, fruits, vegetables, try and create that. They were essentially the organization that started that movement to get healthy meals into schools. And so the funds that I was raising were being donated to them, but in return I rode coast to coast solo, did a cycling trip coast to coast from Ocean Shores, Washington, all to Gloucester, Massachusetts. Yeah.
So this is after your back rehabilitation process. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of it was, personal for me because it was kind of prove to yourself you can do it.
Yeah. You got to get back on your saddle, right? I mean, like in a very real sense.
Very real sense. And trust me, there were moments in that trip that I was like, I don't know if I can do this. It was pretty intense.
Like that's a pretty challenging undertaking just in and of itself. But like you're saying, like because of your back and because of some of the chronic pain that.
the pain, the conditions, I mean, I was riding 100 average of 100 miles a day for 6 weeks straight, and
That's so sick.
through summer, I started in, I believe it was June 2nd, which oddly enough, you look at these things in life, it's like June 2nd. Kate and I's first son together, his birthday is June 2nd. The primary election this year is June 2nd. So it's like this weird date, June 2nd. But I started that trip on June 2nd. And I think I finished July 18th or 20th, something like that. And so you're talking middle of summer through the Midwest of the United States. It's hot, it's windy, got, second degree burns on my back through, from the sun beating down on, you got sunscreen and you got multiple layers of clothing, but at the end of the day, you're still cooking, right?
Totally.
And so, close calls with tornadoes, golf ball size hail, trucks ran me off the road on purpose. You get over there in corn country, they don't like bikers on the road, and so they'll blare their horn at you a half mile back, and
they just run you down.
Your only option is to go off the road. And so several dozen tires, a couple chains, broken wheels. I mean, you're in the thick of it and you're by, it was unsupported. I didn't have a road crew to support me. There was nobody within,
That's so crazy. All right, tell a story from that adventure, because that's what that is, right? Like you take on something big like that, and it's just an adventure.
Yeah, it was. I'll tell you a story. I was in Iowa.
I'm from Iowa, for the record.
Are you?
Yeah. I've been in Montana for like 15 years, but
that's awesome. Well, I was probably an hour from the closest town, and broke a wheel. I should say the closest town with a bike repair place, right? Broke a wheel, and I called around, and the only shop I could find was one I had seen, the prior day, because you're talking an hour driving is a full day riding, basically. And so I called and told them, hey, I have this wheel issue, and they were so incredible. This guy came out, met me, helped me repair the bike, got me a new wheel, no cost, didn't charge me anything, and it was. You want to come join me?
Sure.
Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Hey, it's so nice to meet you.
Wow.
You're good.
So yeah, our first surprise guest. I've got another one coming at some point in time here, but my son Gentry. It's not that big of a surprise. I just want to introduce him to you guys. All right, so we're middle of a mid-country epic bike adventure right now. We've got a blown wheel. We don't know what's going to happen to Russ, if he's going to get run off the road by another trucker. Like the suspense right now is building.
Yeah, it was a fun 6.5 weeks.
So we were dating at this time, and Kate, originally when I started this trip, it was everything was packed. I had a trailer in tow. I planned on camping wherever I could and making the most out of it. And Kate took it to a whole new level. She started calling ahead and getting hotels to donate a room to me in places where she thought I would be, which was hard because, like I said, some days it's like, some days you're like, I can only make it 80 miles. I got another 10 in me, we'll go 110. Or it's just based off of proximity or where you're at. You know that this town's here, the next town's not for 60 miles, so you got to stay here tonight. But so she had to kind of guess where I would land and try and line up the hotels. Well, by Rapid City, South Dakota, she had basically gotten every single night covered for the whole trip, and so I sent my trailer home. I was like, well, we're doing this with panniers. That drops about 80 pounds right there.
And you're talking about a bike trailer, like you're pulling, almost like what you pull your kids in, kind of a thing, except.
Yep. Except loaded with a sleeping bag. The works. So, of course, it was after the Rocky Mountains, so it was like one of those things that was would have been nice to have dropped that trailer before the Continental Divide.
Prior to the pass, yeah, I can imagine.
You're welcome. I stepped in.
Yeah.
You were probably just worried you were going to lose him. Like if we don't get this guy some hotels, he's going to die.
Like, why don't you just come back? We don't have to do this. Nope, I am not quitting. I'm like, awesome. Okay. So I'll just get up at 6 every morning and call hotels for hours until somebody will donate a room.
Yeah.
Cool. But I did.
She did.
But I did.
So back to Iowa. We're in Iowa, or I'm in Iowa.
I am not.
She's in Seattle, and I'm SOL. I can't find anyone to repair this wheel. I call the shop, and they're like, "Well, we got you. We'll come meet you." I'm like, "Well, how long will it be?" They're like, "Well, you're about an hour and a half away." And so they send out a guy. He meets me at the hotel. And repairs the wheel, and we have a couple beers together, and he's like, "All right, we'll have a great rest of your trip," and that was it. It was we had great conversation. There was no charge, there was no expectation. It was just people helping people, and it really restored those type of moments. Restore your faith in humanity. It's like there was nothing to gain from either person except for just like a good person helping another good person. And so that's one of the moments that stuck with me. I mean, there was a lot of bad.
Just to contextualize that too, like that was somewhat desperate straits. Like there isn't a good backup plan in that scenario. You're out in cornfield country. Kate, I'm from Iowa, so about 15 years ago, I've been in Montana for about 15 years. I also think though, Iowa's ragbri country. I don't know if you know, so I think they're somewhat more sympathetic to bikers, at least to some degree. But I love what you're saying there, that there are moments in time that, because you're getting a little jaded out there too, right? You're just getting beat down, and trucks are driving you off the road, and like, I mean, you're like face to face with like the callousness, I think sometimes that our world offers people.
It's so true. I mean, it wasn't probably not even a week prior to that, I had to take a couple days off because of that second-degree burns on the back. I literally had to lay face down in a hotel for a couple of days to let the blisters on my back harden, because it was too pain to bear to continue riding with those rubbing against fabric while you're riding. It was intense. But so there's dozens of those stories of bad experiences, but it's those good ones are the ones you hold on to, because it's like it really does help put things into perspective. So anyways, that experience led me to Seattle University. I took a graduate assistantship up there. I realized through that process that I really want to take this to the next level and get into management and eventually own my own business. And of course, Kate and I were dating and wanted to be close to her, and a great opportunity opened up at Seattle U, where I did my master's. And one thing led to another. There's a ton of stories through there, but long story short, ended up in Denver after several opportunities opened up. The U.S. Bank had a program where they were trying to pick really strong leaders without any banking experience and put them in banking, teach them banking, and see how that compared against the people that knew banking that they were trying to bring up through the ranks and teach leadership, if you will. It was wildly successful. My team and I were top 1% in that company within 18 months by just focusing on people.
Mm-hmm.
And we did everything backwards, drove my management team crazy. Everything that they knew to be the right and only way to do things was stripped down. The layers of the onion were peeled back and showed them that you can lead differently and create even better results.
Mm-hmm.
And
which
so
is
through
to
that,
some degree what they were asking for, right? Like that sounds like the purpose of that project is to bring people outside of the banking industry in to get, an additional perspective, which clearly from your experience, like there was a friction between how they used to do things and then, how it was that like the people outside of the industry, managed or led. That's just a really interesting contrast.
Yeah. So think about it. This is in the time when I was at US Bank, but this was in the time when Wells Fargo was under investigation for opening up all the fraudulent accounts. Huge banking regulation was being put in place through the Obama administration because of some of the,
misconduct, fraud. I mean,
doings that big banks were doing to everyday people. And so there wasn't a lot of trust in banking, not that there is now, but especially then, because of that. The reason I tell you all that is because one of the biggest things I focused on was small businesses, because I truly believe that small businesses are the center of our communities, right? Like we've gone into this world where I feel like so much consolidation has happened, and where we think of business as these big corporations that largely are monopolizing our markets now. But ultimately, the best of America, and Montana still embodies this, the best of Montana is represented through small business. So, the general store in your town, or mom and pop shop, or a restaurant that's been in business there for 30 years, or a hardware store, or whatever it might be.
That is certainly representative of Billings. I mean, we have Walmart, we have, some of these big industries, but primarily, like, you can just drive around. It is small businesses that it's everything from, like, our nonprofits to casinos to, everything else, but it's all small business. I mean, that is like baked into our economy.
Yeah. Whereas you go somewhere like Denver, those type of businesses are being pushed out because of huge consolidation through, corporate mergers or whatever, where it's impossible to compete with a company that can, quite honestly, write their own loans, float their own notes, undercut pricing and competition and then also competitive wage wise, take the employees right out from underneath you to pay them a little bit more, just to sabotage the contracts so that they can steal the business, and then they price jack everything up, and then the consumer ends up being the one that loses. And so,
and maybe because our population is so low, we haven't attracted that kind of attention, and so we do still have a flourishing small business industry. Like, it really is. I mean, I think that if you love small business, then this is a good place to be.
Yeah, for now, right? I think that's why the effort to keep it that way is so important right now. Another big part of my campaign and reason for campaigning. But the reason I'm teeing this up is we one of the businesses that were in my portfolio was a childcare business called Kids Adventures. And I had been courting them a while, and they had some different financial matters to review, cash flow issues, if you will. And Kate she was an exercise science major, and they were looking for basically someone to bring in, similar to what the Pedal for Prevention was about, someone to come in and kind of reinvigorate before and after school care programs with fun activities for kids that can keep them engaged, keep them moving, keep them healthy. She jumped on with them, and ended up being more of a regional manager than doing her exercise science stuff. But what we saw was there was this weird niche. Colorado was a childcare desert, much like Montana is, and that business was declining. The ownership structure was not supportive of some of the needs of the business. And long story short, we became really good friends with the COO, who stepped away from that business. And the next year, the three of us decided to start our own small business.
Well, awesome. Russ, let's jump. I definitely want to hear more and unpack that a little bit, but I want to, because there's so many cool things that you're telling me right now. And one is that you're your family dynamic, your family of origin has just had so many touch points on issues that are really critical, I think, to Montana. From the foster care system to childcare to small businesses. And so I'm hearing all those things, and let's definitely unpack that. But I want to rewind for a second here, because when you were talking about your time in Washington and you were talking about dating Kate, I just saw Kate got this big smile on her face, and there was clearly some stories that kind of emerged in your mind. And I don't know, I want to hear some more of the stories, like maybe just about like how you guys met, and like how, I mean, this is really cool because it sounds like through the banking industry, you guys connected there and saw a vision to create something that is desperately needed, certainly in Colorado, also in Montana as well. And I want to learn about the like life and leadership lessons from that, but I want to hear a little bit more about how you guys met.
Well, have at it.
We met a long time ago. We were actually both 14. Russ just attained his Eagle Scout, and so here in Montana. And I grew up on Vashon Island, which is between Seattle and Tacoma. It's not Bainbridge. There is no bridge to get off the island. You have to take a ferry.
Wow.
I think 2 gas stations, 2 grocery stores, and a movie theater. We got a subway when I was in high school. That was like the big to-do. But it's also the same island that K2 started Seattle's Best Coffee, Seattle Chocolates,
Seattle
Filmworks. A lot of big companies actually started on Vashon. So it's a very funny little eclectic island in the Pacific Northwest. And every year, one of my friends, I grew up going on boats all the time. And so my family would do trips up to the San Juans. And that summer, one of my friend's parents was doing a trip up to the San Juans and let 3 of us girls join them and go boating around the San Juan Islands, which is like, I kind of equate it to like the Caribbean of the Pacific Northwest, not quite as tropical. The water's cold, but it's beautiful. So, much more Pacific Northwest. But our first stop, so imagine there's 4 14-year-old girls on this big boat in the San Juans. And we go to Susha Island, which is one of my most favorite places. And we get off, we have to tender in on our little dinghy, little 6-horse, and we get onto the shore. And there's like 20 boys. There is so many cute boys on the, it is just a teenage girl's dream come true. We're so excited.
We had chartered a vessel, myself and other scouts from Western Montana here. Had chartered a Sea Scout vessel out of Anacortes, Washington, in celebration of all of us achieving this rank of Eagle Scout. So
it's a huge thing.
Yeah, it was 15 to 20 of us probably of Eagle Scouts. They provide the skipper, the captain, and the first mate, but all the boys are the crew. And so you're running this old Coast Guard ship basically through the San Juan Islands and literally sailing through. I mean, we had some crazy seas, but the what's the straits there called?
Strait of Juan de Fuca.
Yeah, I mean, huge waves that you're figuring out how to sail pretty quick. But we get out to the San Juan Islands, and like she said, there's this little every port we go to, there's this boat of girls that keep poking up that were like here.
So we may have convinced our captain
just to straight up follow them around.
Yeah.
like boat style stalking.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not weird at all. No stage 5 clinger, promise. But we definitely followed them. And it was funny when we met them.
But like, all right, these are, really cute 14-year-old boys, but also really accomplished. These are Eagle Scouts. This is a high level 14-year-old, right?
Yeah, and they were cute. I'm going to be honest. But the best part about it is like we're 14, but we obviously 14 probably isn't good enough for these boys. So we tell them we're 16 because I'm sure that makes a world of difference when we meet them. So they tell us they're 16 too. And so we follow them around. every port they ended up at, so did we. It was amazing. We walked through a mausoleum at midnight in Friday Harbor. I'm trying to remember, did we go to Lopez and Orcas? I can't remember all the islands we went to. But we finally get to Friday Harbor is the last island, and they're doing whatever the Boy Scouts needed to do at this point. And so Russ is like, hey, I need to talk to you. And like, we've had this great friendship. Like, we've had so much fun just bombing around together, because us girls were pretty much given full reign. Wherever we went, we got to pretty much do what we wanted to do. And the boys,
not us. Yeah.
Well, you guys got to hang out with us a lot, but we
had curfews and that kind of thing. You know, it was pretty standard stuff, but
we didn't. But we they're getting ready to leave, and Russ is like, "Hey, can you sit down?" And like, I'll never forget it. It's this little bench in Friday Harbor, and it overlooks the whole harbor. And he pulls out his Eagle Scout ID, and he's like, "I have to tell you something." And I'm like, "Okay." Thinking I'm never going to see this guy again. Mind you, there's no Facebook, there's no cell phones.
Yeah.
Like, we grew up in like true writing letters world and long distance calling fees.
10 cents a minute or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yes. And so he pulls out his Eagle Scout ID and he's like, I'm not 16. I'm only 14 and I can't say bye to you without telling you.
Oh, yeah.
Like, cool, me too. Don't have a cool ID to show you, but I'm also 14. He's like, yeah, right. But in reality, though, like he had to close that and tell me. He's like, I consciously, like, I can't.
You just couldn't live with that, yeah.
I'm like, we're probably not going to see each other again, but this is so cute. And I'm 14 too, and I've got braces. And like, I hope I don't have braces at 16. But
well, this is spoken like a true ancestor of Grover Cleveland, right? I think you would have been very proud that you that you fessed up.
Right? Integrity is real.
But so we traded each other's phone numbers. I remembered his home phone number for a really long time. I was able to recite it back, and so we
still
talked.
have it? Can you still do it?
I could do, I think the last 45040. No, that's your mom's number.
Yeah, that's close.
I'm in my 40s now. I'm starting, I'm also a mom. I've got.
Oh, it all goes away. Yeah, I'm 40 in December, so you're in good company.
But we stayed in contact. We wrote letters. We talked long distance. I didn't know there was a thing called Mountain Standard Time. I thought it was just Pacific, Central, and East. And I definitely called him past whatever his curfew was in Montana one night, and I'll never forget it. This is my mother-in-law we're talking about. My mother-in-law is like, do you know what time it is here? And I'm like, same time it is here? She's like, no. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. But I learned that there's a Mountain Standard Time at that point in my life. But yeah, we talked. We kept in contact for what, like a year?
Yeah.
Was it just kind of a friendship that blossomed out of this like island encounter on the Pacific?
I'm a firm believer. Like it sounds funny, but I have really good intuition and feelings on like certain people and certain things. And I loved him. I knew I loved him from like 14. And I say that because it's rung true forever. Anytime I would meet people, they'd be like, oh, I've been to Montana, or oh, I'm going to Montana. I'd be like, I know a guy in Montana. And like, because that matters so much. But it was important to me. And we lost contact through high school. We were both playing sports. And there's no cell phones until we're like seniors. And had significant others and all those things. But
yeah, so the second half of that is...
Sorry, was I taking too?
No. The second half is, I started school here in Montana, played football at Montana Tech, left, enlisted in the Navy, decided I wanted to serve and left. We reconnected while I was in the service through MySpace. I'm sure you probably remember MySpace. Had a bunch of friends reconnect with, but she reached out saying, hey, remember me from San Juan's, and so we reconnected. Stayed in touch for years through social media, Facebook, emerged.
I looked a lot better at this point. I, one, didn't have braces anymore, and I went away from like the 90s, early 2000s, like super thin eyebrows. I actually let some natural eyebrows grow into. So just to give you a picture, I aged with grace a little bit better.
Definitely.
You're welcome.
I wasn't going to say that out loud. But anyhow, so fast forward to our late 20s. She's looking at, I'm looking at, this is about that time I was telling you about, with having gone through that experience in the Navy, looking at, nutrition and fitness. And I'm looking at getting out, potentially opening a fitness franchise. And she had, for the last 5 or 6 years prior to that, she was running a Curves for Women, a couple locations in Seattle that she had started super early. That's super unusual for someone in their early 20s to get into franchising. And so, and then she was looking at ways to pay for college. Mm-hmm. And obviously the National Guard route is common for a lot of people to go in. They pay for your school, and then you serve, a week in a month, 2 weeks a year, whatever, in return. And so we had this like mutual, like, hey, tell me more about this conversation. And that really reconnected us as friends again. We started talking again about, what had the last 10 years or 15 years had looked like. And I was married at that time. She was married at that time. And lost touch again for probably 6 months, almost a year. And I moved back home. I was going through a divorce, and I had gotten out of the Navy, obviously went back to school. My wife at the time, she wanted to stay in the Navy, didn't have any interest in settling down, having kids, anything like that. And so it was just, we'd never had any kids together. It was just mutual differences. We're better friends type thing. And so decided to get a divorce. And Kate picked up on some of my cues on social media that it was, it's a weird time. You're 27 and most of your friends are just getting married, and here you are getting a divorce. And so there wasn't a lot of support network, if you will, from a friend's perspective of, people who understand what it's like to try and figure that part out in your late 20s, when most of them haven't even settled down yet. And also it was a time, I don't know what your parent situation is, but my parents are very old fashioned in the way that like they come from an era where it doesn't matter how miserable you are, you stay married. Like that's like, what you do. And so there was also not a lot of support there either, in terms of like, like that's not really an option, I guess. So long story short, we reconnected.
Russ, in your story, I just hear so much disorientation, especially around that time frame. I mean, with breaking your back, with leaving the Navy, which you thought would be your permanent vocation, and then divorce. There's not a lot of support there. Like that's pretty lonely.
Yeah, and so Kate and I reconnected through that. She was also going through a divorce, and unrelated. In fact, we hadn't seen each other in 12 plus years. But it just became someone that like just understood what that was like, and so it rekindled a friendship that we had established a decade prior. And that bike trip I told you about, the reason I was so committed to that is, and what I told Kate, maybe not the right words now, but at that time, it felt like I had all those things you just pointed out, were just all these failures, right? Like I failed to go where I wanted to go in the Navy because of this injury. Failed marriage, had, there was all these things, failing health, all these things. It was like, the trip almost became as much about proving to myself that I could do it than it did about
you had to take something back that was getting taken from you.
Yeah, than it was about raising a bunch of money for a nonprofit. So it was an interesting time in life for sure. So we about 6 months after that, we started dating and
so I love the element of this story, right? So clearly Kate loved you always. Like that is so like you knew, like your intuition, like you knew that he was the love of your life, and then you really put that to the test, right? Then you go on a 6-month bike trip or whatever and almost like die like 50 times halfway across the country. Just like, just put it to the test, right? Like,
but I think it also sparked such a determination in him too, though.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I was like, you can quit, it's okay. He wouldn't, even through the adversity of it, even through the trials, the tribulations. It became this, how do I overcome and figure it? How do I adapt? How do I pivot? How do I overcome? And that kind of became kind of our mantra. Like,
yeah, that was the turning point for us for life. Honestly, I think was, we both were coming off of this like kind of fractured experience previously, found common bond together. And then I, of course, did this crazy thing that was important for me, but also had someone who supported me through it all. Was just like, yeah, you're crazy. Even if you kill yourself, I know you're not going to stop, but I'll still support you in that. Which was something I had never had, right? It was like, it's okay to quit, but also like, I got you if you want to keep going type thing, which has really become a framework for our partnership together. I mean, yes, we're husband and wife, but we're also best friends. We've been business partners. We've been through hell and back with our kids. And, fast forwarding back to Rocky Mountain Kids, we immersed into that business venture together, put everything on the line financially, and had this emerging business growing fast that had all the right insurance, and then tragedy struck. And, I think that was really our defining moment. I think those experiences, as you know,
tragedy struck. Are you talking about Madison, or are you talking about with Rocky Mountain Kids, like something separate?
No, with Madison. So we were 4 years into the business.
We had really taken off.
Which before we go into Madison's story, like, I mean, it had really taken off. I mean, I did, just a little bit of cursory research on Rocky Mountain Kids, and like, you served an incredible number of kids, and it's still around, right? Or at least the business was handed off. Yeah.
Yep. So so Rocky Mountain Kids itself as a business had been merged into another company as of last year. But during that time, we started with 2 locations. I think we were serving we had maybe 12 staff, 10 or 12 staff. 8, including us, maybe.
With us, there was 12.
Okay.
I got handed a stack of files one day and told that was my new role in the company. Like, you need to take over all things licensing, hiring, staffing, and got handed a stack like this big, not by Russ, but by our partner. And I was like, cool, what do I do? I don't know, figure it out.
Yeah. And that's entrepreneurship, is like, figure it out. You
have to.
Figure it out.
It's an after school program, right? Or it's kind of that type of program. And we've got a couple out here in Billings that are, it's just so important, right? I mean, you think about at-risk underserved kids, what they're going through, the lack of stability in their environment. I mean, your experience in the foster care, obviously, like you had a firsthand, window into what these kids are going through. And this is one more place where we can stabilize kids, get them resources, love them, care about them, and help them mature into the adults that they can be. And to me, like, I mean, this is my nonprofit, Pay Love Forward. This is, my mission, my ministry in life is to care for at-risk underserved kids. And so that's what you guys were doing. And maybe just talk a little bit about that, like what that was, what that was as an opportunity, what you learned about the youth, which, I mean, there's a quote from a gal, she just ran for mayor, Jennifer Owen, but she always says that kids they're 10% of our population, but 100% of our future. I mean, to me, that just speaks incredible volumes, right? Is like, this is the future. And if we don't take a stand there, if we don't care for them, and this is like, I mean, this is my district, and, you know, I'm a Billings guy. So like Dr. Garcia is our superintendent for our school district. And, you know, we have a lot of people here who are fighting for our kids. This is something that we as a community have really embraced. We really care about the next generation.
Well, I think it's important to state that, though, right? And that was one of the things when I would go and talk to principals about coming over to us was childcare is the foundation of the economy. It really is the base of everything with the economy. And if parents don't have somewhere that is safe and affordable to send their children, what happens to the parents in the workplace, but also what happens to these children if they don't have the ability to safe and affordable childcare? We're not investing in our youth. We are leaving them to the streets and to their own devices for those parents that do choose to continue to go to work. And then that's
which maybe because they have to, because your electric bill is still going to show up at your door.
But what are we saying to our future? What are we saying to these youth that we don't support them, that we are not investing in their future? We are, for lack of better words, shitting on their future when we don't find that ability to offer those sorts of services. It's been my biggest thing is affordability and foundation. Without it, what will the future look like for us, for our children, if we don't figure out this problem? It's a huge deal.
Yeah. So we started this, because we still had bills to pay. And as you know, most small businesses don't make any money in their first couple of years. I continued working. I was working at the bank still. We started this. We started with 2 locations. And then quickly, like over the course of the next year, I think we jumped to 8. The following year was like 15.
And 22.
And then 22. And then COVID hit. And that is the same 3 months prior is when Madison was diagnosed. So in late December of 2019 is when she was first diagnosed with leukemia. But 3 months later, COVID hit and all of our programs were shut down. But in that time, building up to that, what we realized was missing was that human connection that we were talking about. Like we had providers in there that were providing the bare minimum service for the maximum dollar with the, inadequate staff, whether it was short-staffed or staff that were undertrained. And so we really tried to build a model that was like, can we keep a business running that is significantly cheaper, and we were roughly 30% cheaper than our competition, pays staff more, retains staff, and recruits and retains the best possible staff. The only way you can do that is to pay them more. So on average, our wages were 20 to 40% higher than our competition. But most importantly, have robust programming that actually impacts the lives of these kids in the time that they're in our care. I mean, it ends up being I think we calculated it out to being an extra 110 days or something like that, school days.
125.
Wow.
Extra 125 school days if a child attends every day with us. That equates out to being an extra 125 school days, which some people would be like, well, that's not good, that they should be in their parents' care. In some cases, sure, but in most cases, no, because what ends up happening is Netflix becomes a babysitter, or they're left to their own devices, or they're not in any type of structured environment where in our programs they were getting a healthy snack, they were getting I mean, just that mindset, that mentality of they should be like, it fails to understand what most families are going through
on a day-to-day basis? Like, if that's your perspective, like, parents just need to step up. Like, we don't need to provide like, this should fall on the parents. You just don't understand what's happening out there, what's going on in reality. And because there are so many parents who are, maybe they're doing their best, maybe they're not doing their best, but like, exactly. I mean, it's either Netflix or maybe they're out on the street, with their friends or but like wherever that falls, like whatever the consequences of that, it falls on these kids, right? And these kids didn't choose their parents. They didn't choose their home environments. They didn't choose to be born into low, socioeconomic status. They didn't choose those things, right? And so like this just like expectation of maybe the parents should be, it's unrealistic and it doesn't comprehend what our kids are actually going through.
Well, and I think to put that in perspective, Russ mentioned that I was a single mom before we started dating. So I had two littles. And when I sold my businesses, I wanted to go back to school because I only had a high school education at that standpoint. But for me to go back to college, I wouldn't be able to work full time. So I either had to choose between having a high school diploma, working somewhere at a minimum wage that I could also get subsidy at that point. Or if I chose to go back to college full time, Washington State at that point, and it may have changed, but Washington State at that point would not grant a single mom subsidy or or any sort of assistance if you were trying to be a college student and better your future for your children. They would not grant you any childcare assistance or anything to be able to do that. So you get faced with the choices, and I see that in this economy, in this world, like you're faced with impossible choices. That the country had been built around the idea of like, let's keep me down, let's keep me at a minimum wage, let's keep me working at McDonald's or Walmart, because then they'll give me subsidy, they'll give me childcare assistance and food stamps. But if I'm trying to further myself to be put in a better position to take care of my children and afford them a better future, well, tough luck, because they're not going to help me do that by any stretch of the imagination. They won't offer me any assistance at that point. And that's what you see across the country. Luckily I had family, and I found I found ways to make it work, but I also was taking my kids to anatomy and physiology labs with me. Nathan got to dissect a pig with me, at the age of 3. And I had some professors that were amazing that worked with me at Seattle University. But I also had people that were like, that's not our problem. So you're either going to sink or swim. I know I'm not alone. Yeah. And
I kind of hear that in this campaign, that this is a campaign for opportunity. Because if we don't provide these opportunities for upward mobility for single moms, or for kids who are, inheriting trauma or, whatever that is, if we don't provide for them, like, we just pay the consequences on the back end. And that's a tragedy for everybody involved. And I love how you described, this idea of after school programming it has an impact on both ends of the equation, right? It allows parents to actually go put bread on their table and not have to worry about what their kids are doing between 3 and 5 when they don't have supervision. But it also provides, and especially if you can, develop meaningful programming, an opportunity to really love, care for, impact, these kids who just need that, they need that so badly.
Well, and fill the gap on programs that traditional public education systems have started to cut out. Whether it's arts or enrichments or physical education time, or even just social emotional learning with fellow students. I mean, like the ability to just bond and build relationships is so discounted, but really that is one of the life skills that will make or break whether you're successful. Is, can you relate to, problem solve, or work through conflict together with people that are from different backgrounds, different cultural upbringings,
especially post-COVID.
Especially post-COVID.
Yeah. All these kindy babies, they grew up in a world of masks. They grew up in a world of isolation, and now we're putting them in schools and expecting them to have the social emotional skills. We're expecting them to thrive, and not realizing that the adversity that they have faced to get to kindergarten in these public schools is real. And it is provoking a lot more discussion around the behaviors that are coming up from it. That we're seeing increased behavioral issues. We're seeing increased IEPs and 504s just in this kindergarten and first grade class.
And lower literacy. And I mean, there's just so many consequences from what was just a global trauma. Like, it doesn't matter what you think about it. Like, what the world went through was traumatic in every sense of the word, economically, psychologically, socially.
Yeah.
So, but you guys also went through an additional trauma. So you've started this, fledgling, really amazing after school program that's getting off the ground, and then COVID hits, shuts you guys down. But also that's the time when was Madison diagnosed then?
I was pregnant too. I do think it's important to start off.
Give me maybe just kind of talk about the context and let's tell Madison's story.
Yeah, so we had grown to a point in the company that I had made the decision to step away from stable banking job, insurance.
Somebody else writing your check.
Yeah, to suddenly it's like it's all on you. And
I came home from a weekend doing grad school, and I get in the car and he goes, "I put in my notice for the bank." I'm like, "Whoa, wait, what are we going to do about healthcare?
Yeah,
I've got to figure it out." Okay.
We had grown to a point where we could afford healthcare with the company. We wanted it badly. We had enough employees that we wanted to be on the leading edge of small businesses, again, with the idea of like, if we're going to build this thing, we're going to build it right. And we want those amazing employees to want to work for this company because of everything that we do. And we knew that healthcare was one of those things. And so we brought on healthcare, and I stepped away from the bank. We ended up getting pregnant with our now 5-year-old son.
Who was a twin.
Yep, who was a twin. And we had just lost that twin in November. And so holidays roll around.
Sorry, you lost one of the twins?
Yeah, I was pregnant with Cash. So Cash had a twin. They were fraternal twins, but we did lose one at about 10 to 12 weeks. So it was very early, but we had just discovered that we had lost what would have been his twin at that point, right before Christmas.
So we were already kind of
this is 2019.
Yeah, this is 2019. We're kind of already in a funk, I guess is the best way to put it.
It's devastating. The loss of a child, like there's just nothing.
And it's not to stack rank them in any way, but like, it's still hard whether you met the child or you didn't. And so I understand when people, feel that sense of loss even through pregnancy. It's real. And
I just my sister had triplets and lost one of the triplets and her name was Everly. The middle name of my daughter is Everly. I mean, we just carry her, like the life that we missed out on is we're just heartbroken as a family. Like you just don't, like, it's, I don't know. I don't think none of that matters. Like that was a part of our family that we lost. And so we, the grief it just remains. And so I'm so sorry for your loss.
No, thank you. Yeah, it was interesting time. We had done, so before the bike trip, to put this all in perspective, Kate and I knew we wanted to have kids together, but my doctor at that time did a physical before the trip, made sure I was, good to go. And they had warned us that, hey, there's a strong likelihood that you'll be infertile after this trip. Like that much time in the saddle as a male it's not uncommon for that to make you infertile. And so they're like, you might want to consider that before you go and ride 4,000 miles or double that with training up to it, And so we decided to store some embryos together prior to the trip. And so two of the embryos made it that we had attempted. And so this is now fast forwarding from.
That was 2012.
12 to now 2019, right? And so we were at that point where they're like, well, you can the facility we had him frozen at were said you can transfer the facility because that facility was closing. You can donate them to science. You can destroy them or you can use them. And of course we're like, well, no brainer for us. We're ready to use them. And so we used them, and the two, they both took, which is also unusual for in vitro. But about, like she said, 10 to 12 weeks in, one of them didn't make it, and so the other one did, and that's our son Cash now. But this is November, heading into the holidays, so it's kind of a weird time, anyways. But Kate and I also felt this weird sense of like kind of calm before the storm. I remember we used to walk almost every day. And I remember both of us saying like, there's just something weird.
Something's coming.
It was eerie.
It was eerie. Yeah. It was like, we just both felt this sense of like something. And we, I think at the time we thought maybe it's just the grief, grief process of having lost this twin. But I also remember it being significant. We were both just like, there's something strange coming down the line,
And how old was Madison at this point? 9, maybe?
He was 12 at the time.
Okay.
Which is a really, really hard age for kids to be diagnosed with cancer. It's one of the highest risk ages to be diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah, she had flu-like symptoms, and she had, she was at that age where she had started shaving her legs, and so she was preteen, and like,
she was competitively dancing.
Dancing.
Busy, and she would get joint pain. She would have hip pain, but I'm a physical therapist student at that point in time, and it made sense. Like, she was practicing 9 to 12 hours a week for dancing, so she was tired. Her hips would hurt sometimes. She was shaving, so it looked like she had razor burn at times.
But really, it was petechiae, one of the
markers for the early markers for leukemia.
And hip pain too. It's a differential diagnosis symptom for cancer as well, which I didn't know at that time.
So take her to the doctor. Doctor notices the symptoms, the petechiae, does some testing. Obviously, we get the terrible news that they think she has leukemia, which...
We're in Seattle, so we got Seattle Children's because it's right after Christmas.
Yeah, it's right after the holidays, so we're back in Seattle. We used to do Christmas at her mom's house in Seattle almost every year, so we're back. Seattle Children's obviously being one of the best in the country, but floored with this news, right? I mean, it was devastating, and so all the onslaught of tests begin, I just remember feeling like numb. I don't know. I know you've had a similar experience. I'd love to hear about your feeling initially too, but it was just like this tunnel vision almost of like,
well, you don't
trying to make sense of it.
And I think, cancer hasn't really ever been something that, for at least in my life, hasn't really been something that is afflicted or occurred to close loved ones for me. Outside of like my grandmother passed from lung cancer, but that felt pretty that she did it herself from smoking so much, and not to make light of that, but it felt self-inflicted. Whereas like if you don't have a history of cancer in your family, it's not that you don't necessarily know a lot about it or that you don't think it can't happen, but it's not really part of your vocabulary or part of like something that you feel like is there.
And almost like unreal. Like there just wasn't a context that you couldn't make sense of it.
No, and why would it happen to your daughter? Why would it happen? Like, why not me? And I think that's, as parents, that's the question we'll always have. Like, why not give it to me? Let my kid experience life. Let her experience her first kiss. Let her experience her first high school dance. Let her experience graduation. And she didn't get to do that. But yeah, they did testing. And I'd been talking with my brother-in-law, who's an oncologist, and he had recommended that we check for Philadelphia chromosome positive, which they were already running the tests for, and it came back that she was Philadelphia chromosome positive, which is a very rare form of leukemia. It only affects, I think, roughly 5% of all leukemia cases. In the 80s, like there was like a 30% chance of survival, but they had come a long way through research, pediatric cancer research that this administration is trying to cut.
They're cutting.
They are, but don't worry. They gave AI a bunch of money because AI is going to fix cancer research. But so she was diagnosed with that, which changes the trajectory of what her treatment and roadmap are going to look like. Russ has to go back to Colorado at this point. Our other three kids.
Yeah, you've still got a family, and this stuff I can, interesting. I've never heard of that what you were describing, and fairly familiar with the vernacular for leukemia because we also, spent years inside of it. But none of the rest of your world stops, right? Like you get this diagnosis, and it's like your world stops. Like it's just so earth-shattering that. Yeah, you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. The road that you saw your life going down is just no longer there. But at the same time, everything is still moving forward. Like the world doesn't slow down to let you catch up.
Even though your world has been shattered into a million pieces.
Just blown to pieces, yeah.
And so Russ flew back to Colorado with Nathan, Maya, and Malia because we still had our other three. I was pregnant with Cash, and I stayed behind with Madison while she did her first 6 weeks of treatment at Seattle Children's. But because she had that rare form, your roadmap looks a little different. And so they kick you out of the hospital after about 10 days, but you have to stay close to the hospital. You can't only be within 15, 20 minutes, which is nowhere near my little island I grew up on.
Yeah. Well, and so, just to give kind of context there, so at least for Gentry, who had AML, his first round was 6 cycles of chemotherapy. And at least for us, it would be about a month, right? So he'd get, the treatment, and then his cell count would descend to 0, and then we'd have to wait for it to recover. And then we'd get released, but we still had to stay by Denver Children's, right, within a couple of miles. And so, there was a place called, there's Ronald McDonald and there's Brent's Place, but we didn't get into Brent's Place. So like literally we're living in like Airbnbs and Ronald McDonald. And so, just to give context to what you're describing, like you're just scrambling to try and figure out like where to even sleep at night. Like you're in the hospital, then you're out of the hospital. And it's just, you're just problem solving the whole time.
We were in that exact situation. We had a mortgage to pay in Colorado. Couldn't afford a second rent, right? Like I think people don't understand, like you're talking about, okay, well, we'll just rent hotel rooms in Seattle. Well, that's at minimum $100 a night, more likely $200 to $300, depending on, whether you want to sleep in a not great area or not. But more importantly, it's like, just the stability of the whole situation. You're already feeling compromised. You're this family unit now for us that's been already torn apart by the diagnosis, but now geographic distance as well. So it's not like me and the siblings could even pop in to see how they're doing, because we were in Colorado and they're in Washington. And so we basically have to go almost pretend to live our life in Colorado like normal, all the while Kate and Madison are in Seattle, and there's this amazing family that for us stepped in to help.
Well, Seattle has such a good framework. The social worker helped me find, reached out to this family that offered their their apartment above their garage.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And just offered it to us, didn't ask for anything in return. We showed up to a full bag of groceries. I'm still friends with them. They're amazing people. Mm-hmm. We're just there if I needed emotional support. She was pregnant too. She had a baby while we were staying there. But it was stairs to get up to it. And what people don't realize is when you're in a high risk, cancer treatment in general is high risk. But then you take teenagers, and it's that ages like 12 to 17 where it seems to affect their bodies even harder than the younger and the older. One of Madison's treatments was high dose methylpred. And it got to the point where it ate at her muscles so much that she couldn't walk for a couple of weeks. And so I'm almost 20 weeks pregnant at this point, and I'm having to carry her down the stairs. My mom, who had left her car for me, because now you also have to have transportation as well, I would have to carry her to the car to drive her to Children's and then get a wheelchair and try and get her in to do her treatment.
Yeah, because you have 3, sometimes 4 appointments a day, even when you're discharged, like you're utterly attached to the hospital. And her blood counts are probably incredibly low. So, even if she gets a bump or a bruise, there's risk of bleeding. There's, she's getting transfusions. There's just an endless number of things that because like that's what chemotherapy does. It just kills your system. And it guts you.
I got put in contact with a couple of other families that were going through different pediatric cancer treatments for their children. And one of them, is a lady out of Missoula, and her daughter actually had AML as well.
Which is what Gentry had, AML, with Down syndrome though. So it's actually a little bit different of a diagnosis than AML if you don't have Down syndrome, which is.
Yeah, I'm sure it changes all the course. When her daughter went into remission, and then within 6 months, her daughter was, she had AML again. And when I would talk to this woman just for support, she would tell me, it's like my child is a skeleton of who they used to be, because the chemo, the radiation, everything you're doing to try and rid this horrid disease and give your child a chance at a future, you're gutting them. You're gutting them from the inside out. You're just feeding them full of these chemicals, praying that these chemicals is better than the disease that they have. And I'll never forget that. And that mom's daughter passed June 19th. And I don't know why I remember that date so well, but I will never forget it. It was about 2 months prior to losing Madison. And I just remember it rocking my world. And I've still to this day never met that mom in person, despite that she's in Missoula. Her and I keep in contact. But I remember how hard it hit when she told me, it's so hard because you're just gutting the child that you knew. They become a skeleton of who they were. And I think that rings true for anybody that goes through cancer treatment. But I think as a parent, it's even more devastating and traumatic to watch your child, the love of your life, go through something so horrific and life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
You're watching them, and so Gentry's story, so he had AML, and so we had 6 cycles of chemotherapy, just the whole thing, and then it's interesting because AML with Down syndrome is actually a pretty good prognosis. It's better than if you don't have Down syndrome for whatever reason. And so he had about a 90+% chance of full recovery, full remission. And so we went through these 6 cycles. So it was a year. All of the your world breaks apart. Like it's just horrible. Like you survive one day at a time. You solve one problem at a time. You cannot see any farther than that. Your child is suffering in these ways that I don't know that until you've sat with your child while they go through that, you can really understand. And so anyway, we beat it. We thought we beat it. Rang his bell in Denver and then came home for 3 months. And, again, a 90+% prognosis that he would stay in remission, and then he didn't. So he relapsed. And and so this is like, and I wanted to kind of make this point even more on the kind of political end of this equation, but so he relapses, and then it's an inversion of the percentages, right? So he goes from a 90% prognosis to a 10% or probably less. And part of the reason is that they don't do bone marrow transplants for kids with Down syndrome. Like it's not really on the table, and that's what we were being told. And so until a piece of scientific research came out, right? So it was a meta-analysis that came out about a month after he was diagnosed with, he relapsed. And so they were telling us that this is over, we can do palliative chemo, we can do, we're looking at all of our options, but it's terminal at this point in time. And then a piece of medical research came out that changed the recommendations for kids with Down syndrome and AML, and qualified us for a bone marrow transplant. And that was still like a very, very long road, but he had a piece of scientific research, the stuff that we're cutting right now, not come out at this precise moment in time, Gentry wouldn't be here. And he is now. And I mean, I just say that honoring your story and honoring Madison. And I lived in the hospital for 2 years. And so one of the things I think just probably because my heart was like just bleeding out in that space, but made friends with a lot of the kids that were in there. And there's another boy named Cole. I mean, just to even talk about him, but he passed eventually, but he was doing Shakespeare plays until the end of his life. He had the record. So the kids would walk in it's on the 7th floor, and they would walk laps. And he had the record for the most laps anybody had ever walked during. And that was just Cole. And I just think about, I think about him all the time. Like I've never met somebody who suffered so well in my entire life. I mean, he was just a testament to resilience and grit, and he was just brilliant too. I mean, he's just this brilliant kid. He was so sweet, and I actually, like, his parents invited me over, and I just have this memory of just going over there, and I read him a poem. I'll send you the poem at some point in time, but it was a poem about him called The Last Lap. But he walked like 57 miles or something in that hospital ward. And it's a big building, but you can imagine, each lap around the hospital was, maybe a 1/10 of a mile or a 15th of a mile. And he did 57 miles while he was there. Just going through what our children went through. And I mean, I don't know, these kids, they just live with me, like, and Madison too. Like I just even talking to you guys and hearing your story like that, I will carry her memory as well, and Cole's and Gentry's, and to me, and not to because I want to hear more about Madison, but I know that this is part of your why. It's why you're running, like that. It's
the why.
Yeah. And you live on Madison Ranch. Isn't that correct? That you went back and bought a place in Montana and named the ranch after her?
So Madison was transferred back. She was released to be able to be transferred back to Colorado. When was that?
February 3rd. February 3rd, we got on a plane and came back to Denver. So we transferred to the 7th floor. Probably know some of the same nurses. I'm still friends with a couple of the nurses from the 7th floor.
Oh, seriously? So you did spend some time at Anschutz.
From February until she passed. We mainly went to the South, the Highlands Ranch South Campus, with where her oncologist was based out of, and just because of where we lived, that was the closer one. But when she did inpatient, or if she had a fever, or any of those red flags where the blood counts dropped, we would go to Anschutz. And so she hated those walks. That's why, and I started smiling, because I remember I would bribe her, like, come on, we have to get up, we have to walk. And she hated walking around that floor. And the part of it was, it's just her age, and a 13-year-old girl at the end with no hair. Like, you talk about one of the most emotionally destructive ages already, that is so hard on a teenage girl. And then you take away their external looks, which us as adults know that that's just superficial, but to a child, a lot of it is their identity at that age. And you take that away from them. Like, she lost her beautiful blonde hair. Like, that was tragic to her. And so she got really good at doing her makeup. She looked beautiful, but she did not want anybody to see her outside of that room. So during COVID, we spent a lot of time in Anschutz, which is a very interesting way to do cancer treatments, because they would put you in a triage room to make sure they would clear you for COVID. And you think about how fast those COVID tests are now, like it would take 2 hours or more. Like we would get there because she had a fever. And so you'd have to do all those blood tests, be held for 48 hours until the fever clears and all that stuff before you could go home. And they would hold you in that triage room. I think one point we got held in that triage room for 6 hours before they could clear us of COVID. And that was like in the peak of it, when it was hitting everybody, and they'd have those 0 negative rooms, or I can't remember what they're called.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I like lived in one for like a month. No, a couple of times. So a couple of months. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And especially with COVID, I mean, it was so scary too. And you talk about an immunocompromised child who, like, they're so vulnerable. I mean, like, we were just terrified of this stuff. And, you know, like, it's just circulating, you know, you're seeing it on the news. It's like, it's everywhere. And I mean, that's terrifying as a parent, as a, you know, somebody going through that experience. Like, I don't know that you can really understand the level of just terror and fear that you can experience in that situation.
And then it bleeds into your other children, right? Like, then your other children have to be careful. They have to make sure they're hand sanitizing as soon as they walk in the door. You're sanitizing all the doors constantly. No, you can't go see a friend. No, you can't go do those things, because you become this little isolation unit. And then you start worrying about, am I giving anybody a quality life right now? Or am I just operating in this fear-based world of, this is what it is, and nobody can have any life. Mm-hmm. You know, like, you think about, it was such a bizarre time to go through it, but also how much it affects everybody else around you, like your other children. I don't know if your daughter was alive when your son went through it.
Yeah, my daughter's 6 now, and so we just got back to Billings like 6 months ago after all of this. So my son is 3; he's just about to turn 4, and so all of this is, you know, so fresh.
Yeah, I'm sure. So you just got back from Denver. Is that because you guys just did your bone marrow transplant?
So, so we did the bone marrow transplant, and yeah, I mean, that was like last November. So we're kind of a year out from when we were just in the midst of it. And
well, and they don't talk about it a lot, right? But if your child has a bone marrow transplant, like, you have to stay right there for like 100 days, right? Mm-hmm. Something like that, to make sure that they don't have any rejections to it. And how much did your whole family go, or did you guys?
Well, my wife's a physician, so I'm a mental health counselor, was a mental health counselor, and this would be a couple of years ago. I had to kind of step away from my practice, and then wound up primarily living in Denver, so I had to kind of be the, you know, primary caregiver for Gentry for the most part. Although, I mean, my wife and I, like, you know, you just don't survive this stuff unless you have a good teammate. Like, I owe everything to my wife. Which also, Russ, like, this podcast was her idea. If my wife tells me to do something, I just do it. Like, this is.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. And clearly, talking to Kate, this is probably, you know, good advice for both of us. But, you know, she just read about your story, and I mean, it was so moving on so many levels. One is just to talk to other people who've gone through this thing that it's just really hard to relate or to convey to people who haven't gone through pediatric cancer. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just such an island of an experience that you just can't, like, the level of, I mean, it's just everything, right? Like, it's so raw, it's so real, it's so hopeless, but it's also so meaningful, and you're watching these beautiful little kids fight, like, in these incredible ways. And I mean, I didn't know Madison, but I know all of those kids, and those kids were such an inspiration. Like, they were so courageous, and it was all of them, you know? And I want to hear you talk a little bit about Madison. I would love to just get to know her a little bit, but so, you know, so we were 60 days in the hospital or something like that, you know, waiting for his counts to recover, because that's what a bone marrow transplant is. They just blast you with the most savage dose of chemo, just wipe you out. I mean, it was just horrendous, you know. And then we're in the NICU and stuff like that, and, you know, my son gained 10 pounds of just fluid. I mean, he looked like almost plastic, you know. He was getting like 20 different medications at points in time. He's like on incredible doses of pain medications. I've never seen that level of suffering ever anywhere else. And then somehow, and this is just a testament to the like what they did for my son was the equivalent of landing somebody on the moon. Truly was like the impossibility of what we were up against, and the fact that somehow we made it to the other side is just a credit to the medical system, to these brilliant doctors, to these relentless nurses that are just testaments to compassion and competence. And I have so much gratitude for the people who fought with my child and fought with Madison and Cole and all of these kids. It was an act of love, and we saw that firsthand. And I know, Russ, that you've talked a little bit about the firsthand window into both what is broken and what works in the medical system. And I know that's also a part of of your message.
It's for me one of the hardest parts about that is this shouldn't even be a politicized issue. This shouldn't be political at all. I don't understand the folks on the other side that are pushing back against just anyone should be able to get this type of treatment at any time, no matter what your socioeconomic status or job status or age or health condition or country of origin or whatever. We're human, and it's hard enough to deal with these things, as even with the best resources at your disposal. It's probably harder than landing on the moon. It's more like a mission to Mars, every case is uncharted territory, because every single person's body and chemistry and anatomy is so different that what works for one kid may not work for the next kid or person, right? And we learned that the hard way. We chose not to go with the experimental route. We were given the experimental route or the kind of tried and true method.
Because you're faced with those choices throughout the entire process, and they're just horrible options on either side.
And there was no guarantee that we were, because it was a 50-50, basically the luck of the draw. But Madison was 13 at that point, and she opted out. She didn't want to do it because if we would have gone with the trial method, the potential of she would have had to take more of those high dose methylpred steroids. And her fear of losing her ability to have muscle strength was real. And yet, and that's something I think about every day. Her doctor, who's an amazing man, her oncologist, he pushed for her to do it. And he kept telling her the long-term side effects would have outweighed the potential of the steroid. But she was 13. And all that was real to her was the fact that she couldn't walk for almost a month, and how horrible those steroids were. And so she opted out of it, and that was her right to do. But on the same token, had she gone the trial route, maybe she'd still be here, and who knows? Yeah. She's not, and I can't change that.
Yeah. So we actually, it's important to say, I think, that as far as the cancer goes, Madison actually beat the cancer.
She was one pill away from remission.
Yeah. And that was July?
No.
Early August?
August 25th, she would have taken her last pill.
No, I'm saying the cancer diagnosis.
With the MDR.
Mm-hmm.
Her MDR, which is the minimal disease residual test, I believe it's what it's called, came back at less than 0.01. And so with that Philadelphia chromosome positive, that's huge. Meaning that in her body, there was less than 0.01 of that disease in there, which means she'd killed it. So we had to finish out the treatment, because just because you've gotten rid of the cancer, you don't stop the treatment. You have to still continue that roadmap, because the roadmap is what they have found to be tried and true and what keeps the disease away. So they had discovered that, I think it was in June when the MDR came back.
Yeah, June or July. And so we were on cloud nine. We were like, okay, we got past the hardest part of this, knowing that there's a long road left. Obviously, percentage of remission, chances of remission were high because of this Philadelphia positive chromosome. But like you said, you take it one day at a time. You fight one battle at a time. And I remember that just being a really good day.
It was a really good day. But we also, something clicked with us too that summer of like, despite what the outcome was, she needed to have some quality of life. She needed to actually enjoy the time that she had. And I don't know why that suddenly, like, that whole demeanor of me changed, of like, I wanted her to be happy. Her and I never talked about the idea of her dying. Her and I never talked about, if she died, what do we do? Do we cremate her? Do we bury her? What does she want? We never talked about that, because that wasn't on the table. We were going to beat it. And so that summer we did lots of inner tubing with her friends. We would take the boat out to a lake that allowed us to inner tube, even though it was COVID. And we made sure her friends they would test before they'd come over. But she had she would wear her snow cap in the middle of summer in Denver, because she didn't want anybody to see that she didn't have hair. But she had the time of her life. She'd get mad at me because I banned Russ from throwing her off the inner tube. I'm like, inner tube, she was too frail. So she was mad that I didn't let her be treated quite the same. But
she was a kid that day. Like, she was just a 13-year-old girl with her friends.
Yep. Let her drive the boat and, just live, but she still had her sense of humor. She, she had the prettiest head, even bald. It was just so pretty, but she figured out if she leaned against her bed in the house that she could rub her bald head against the wall, like on the paint, and it would just create this vibration, this noise that none of us figured out for the longest time what it was.
Like a bear was on the deck, and where we lived, we got bears.
Yeah.
She's just messing with you.
She was messing with us. Yeah. So she would wait till all of us had kind of settled down, and she had a little, like, we had taken our dining room and kind of made it into a main floor bedroom for her, so that we were, she was close to all of us and didn't have to go up and down stairs in the house and that kind of thing. But she figured out if she laid in bed and rubbed her head against the wall just right, that it would create this funny noise that all of us would be like looking around the house for, looking outside, like, what is that noise? And then we'd go into, like, look in her room. She'd pretend to be asleep, or something like that. And then finally we figured out she was laughing so hard one day. We figured out
she couldn't keep her secret any longer.
She was laughing because it had driven us up a wall. We could not figure out what this noise was till we heard her chuckling, and she realized that she'd had us all in pieces.
Like 30 minutes. Yeah. She had a heyday with it. She had a great sense of humor, and she was my firstborn. She was my little towhead, blonde hair, blue-eyed little twin. She was my first true love. Like, well, I've always loved this guy, but I'm gonna give cred to my firstborn child. But
much due.
But she was baby girl. Like, we were just we navigated what it was like to be a young mom and a firstborn child together. Like, when you're a first time parent, you don't really know what that world looks like. I'd never changed a diaper before her. I didn't really know I wanted kids at that point. Now look at me. But we navigated that world together, what it was like to parent a child and what it was like to have a mom who had no clue what she was doing. Like, we were best buddies. We fought tooth and nail, but she was my best friend. I miss her. Miss her so much.
Yeah, so we thought we were past it, and she
It was right before Malia's birthday. So it was so it was the 21st, which was a Friday. I took her to the doctor.
she's having headaches, right?
She was having headaches, and we needed to do blood checks to see what her platelets and what her red blood count was. They were low, but they weren't they weren't at the transfusible point. She was so excited. She was so worried she was going to be in the hospital for Malia's birthday. And so her and I went
Malia's our youngest daughter, so she would have been
Malia was turning 4.
would have been turning 4 that year.
She was 3. So we went to Target to go birthday shopping for Malia, and we went and looked at little baby clothes. And I just remember my heart breaking. She's showing me all these little baby girl clothes. She's like, I'm going to have a daughter someday. And I'm like, my heart's breaking because I'm like, I don't know if you'll be able to have kids. But
Yeah, all the stuff that gets taken away.
Yep.
she was so happy. And she was so happy to throw Malia her birthday. And then we went back to the doctor that Monday. And she had no platelets. She had like 1. And her red blood count was like, I think it was like 4. And, typically they transfuse at 7 for hemoglobin. So they transfused her. They sent us home. And the next morning, her petechiae was so bad. And she was just purple and red. Like her whole body was covered in it. And so I took her back, and her counts hadn't changed. Platelets were still at 1. And her red blood cell count was, I think, even lower at that point, which if your child has had transfusions, you usually expect to see the numbers increase. So they thought that was weird. So they retransfused her. They checked her counts, and her counts didn't change. So where the transfusions were going, nobody knew. They checked her for, I can't remember what it was called, like ice or ice. I can't remember what it was called. She tested negative for it. They gave her, they did CTs of, well, not CTs, but we checked her to see if the blood was pooling in her spleen or in her liver. Nothing was going. She was fine, but she was having these splitting headaches. But I don't know if she underplayed it or what, because she was having them in the hospital that day. But they sent us home. And she was so stressed out. And I had snapped at her on the way home because she was stressed out about her homework. And I told her she needed to get back on it. And that once she felt better, we would get caught up on her work. She was in 8th grade. She had just started 8th grade. And she got home, and her siblings had said something to her, and it was like a splitting headache. And I had told them, just leave her alone. She doesn't feel good. And then she started barfing up blood. And so I was like, we got to go back to the hospital. So I took her back to the hospital, and she had a brain bleed. And so by the time we got to the hospital, she couldn't really see. She wasn't 100% conscious. She just kept barfing. And so they tried to transfuse her so that they could do the procedures, but her body was rejecting them.
Okay, sorry. So her body rejected the platelets, and ultimately the brain bleed couldn't stop. You don't have platelets.
Yeah, nothing. You can't. It doesn't. You can't clot. You can't stop it.
Our only option was to opt for a port. What's it called? Craniotomy, which worked temporarily for about a couple hours, and then the port clogged as well. And basically, she passed from a stroke, severe stroke that, um, her too much pressure on the brain, and her vital systems began shutting down. So it all happened so fast. I mean, it was
Hours.
within hours. Yeah. So,
And we had one of the best pediatric neurosurgeons in the country.
They're
So it
incredible.
was no fault. It just her body rejected the treatments.
Well, and just the process of treating cancer when you do that much damage to their little bodies, it
yeah, she fought as
just
hard
it
as she
breaks
could.
things that sometimes you can't put back together.
Yeah. She had nothing left.
But we never talked about it. That wasn't our plan. Yeah. That wasn't our plan. She should be in college right now. She would be a freshman in college this year. But she's not. She didn't get to have her first kiss with a boy, which I know sounds silly, but it's those moments that you wait for your children to go through, for her to go to high school and have their first school dance and have her first heartbreak and get her driver's license and apply for colleges. She didn't get to do any of that. And there are other families that feel this way and have these. There's other families that have had success. But I fear now with this administration that more families are going to feel the pain, the daily heartache.
Well, I just even think with Gentry's Care, like, to me, it was a little bit of a high water mark, unless we can course correct. I mean, thank God rest that there are some good people out there willing to take on this fight, which is, as far as I can tell, getting more and more high stakes every single day. But you think about that piece of medical research that came through just at a moment in time to enable my son to get a transplant, and for the level of care and capacity that our hospitals currently have, like all of the research, decades, centuries of research, that culminated in this moment where we landed, my son on Mars. And like, to me, it's a little bit of a high water mark at this moment, because we are rolling all of those things back right now. And I know that, Russ, you and I talked a little bit before this, but man, I'm so angry with what's going on in our country. And I'm so angry with the state of national politics and the cruelty of the people that are running our country. And so I know that this has become a why for you guys. Like, you're entering a pretty brutal world. You're taking something on. I mean, it's maybe a little bit like like losing your job in the Navy and deciding to ride your bike across the country or something like that. Some kind of crazy idea, but you're stepping into the milieu. You're stepping into the public discussion of how do we pull our country back from the brink when it's being run by sociopaths, by cruel people, I just don't like. I mean, the stuff that we're watching come out of Washington right now. I mean, from AI videos of dumping feces on the American populace to, using the word retard on Thanksgiving. Like, that's my son. My son
Yep.
has special needs. Like, I take this stuff so personally. Like, and to me, like, we have an obligation. I mean, Gentry is my why. My daughter is my why. Our kids are our why. I mean, that goes back to, like, the child care you guys were offering, right? Like, if we can't protect the future generations, if we can't protect, our children are the future, right? And so
Yeah.
we got to fight for them, because the world that they're about to inherit, the one that we're about to hand them, is so broken.
It's a horrible place right now. Well, and over the weekend, I took my oldest son to the doctor. He has a sinus infection. He's fine. They had a sign on their door. So this is at Western Montana Clinic. They had a sign on their door that the top line says mission, and then it says below it, we will provide our patients with the same high quality health care that we expect for our families to receive. And I took a picture of it, and so I was reading it because it hit so hard to me that in this world where we're trying to reduce the accessibility to healthcare. We have a network, a clinic that's saying we're going to treat our patients the way we would want our family to be treated. And why would we be rolling that back? Why would we be taking that away? Why wouldn't we want to care for people the same way we want to be cared for? And that's my fear. That's my fear, is that they're trying to make healthcare for only the people that can afford it, not as a right, not as a human kindness.
Yeah, I mean, that is the world we're really going to live in very soon. Whereas, if you're not from the right social class or whatever it is, if your kid gets leukemia, like you're just out of luck. I mean, that we are careening towards that world. And I think about Madison's story, and like, as heartbroken as I am for you guys, and I am so heartbroken for your loss and for her. And I can't say enough about that. But there are things in the story that sort of, it can anchor me a little bit, like as I kind of hear what you guys went through. One, that she was loved immensely by her parents, like, she was loved, and that's like a really big thing.
The pain in the butt, but she was my baby girl.
Yeah, for sure. She, I told you, I think this town chose us. We didn't choose it. Madison's dream was she loved horses, and she loved Montana, and she loved coming up and visiting Grandma and Grandpa and riding the horses up here. My folks still lived in Stevensville at the time, in the Bitter Valley, had a couple horses. We have so many photos of her coming up in the summers and riding in her childhood. But, one of the things she mentioned going through treatment is that we always talked about, where would you go? It's just, I want to live in Montana. I want to live in Montana. And so after she passed, we didn't care what it would take, whether it break us financially or what, but we wanted to create that dream in her honor. And so we found this spot in St. Regis, named it Madison Ranch after her. And it's one of the most peaceful places in the state. It really is a beautiful spot right on the Clark Fork. But, I talked in the beginning of this discussion with you about Jamie and how we found a higher calling here, that, we were brought here to help this community, to help her, to help.
Well, this community has helped us.
This community has helped us heal in so many ways.
And rally around. You probably haven't talked about Malia, and I know we're running up against the timeline, but our Malia, our youngest daughter, also, when we moved here, we almost lost her as well. And this community really rallied around us to help us get the care we needed. And luckily, Malia was declared in remission in April.
Yeah.
But it's been only a year after Madison passed, we were faced with another set of really horrible news with Malia.
It was cancer again?
No,
we thought it was. They put us back in oncology up in Kalispell.
There's a disease called pulmonary capillaritis, which is basically
a very rare autoimmune disease.
In her lungs, that she needed dozens and dozens of blood transfusions before they finally realized what was causing it. But again, in summary, took years of treatment. They figured out what it was, and the only thing that could cure it was a high dose steroid and IVIG, and insurance does not want to cover IVIG. And so at that time, she was needing a dose of IVIG every 2 weeks, and every 4 weeks, and each dose was at least $10,000, not covered by insurance. And so, again, amazing doctors here, amazing team rallied around us and helped fight those insurance companies to get that added to their approved medication list for this rare disorder. But
we're still fighting our insurance company, on it. Yeah.
Well, and it's absolute crap, right? Like, sorry, I'm the unhinged one between the two of us. I'm not the one running for office, but I know I really want to meet your son, and I want to be mindful of time as well.
Yeah.
But the thing with the cancer, or the thing with insurance, they had an allergist that was reviewing her cases, reviewing her medical treatment to determine whether or not her really rare condition that affects less than 100 kids in this country, an allergist who has nothing to do with rheumatology and pulmonology, would tell us that she didn't need IVIG. And so the insurance would reject our claims because an allergist who had no business making those decisions was the little pencil warrior behind the desk, deciding whether or not our child deserved the treatment.
And what's worse now is they're going the wrong direction. They'll have AI approving and denying these now. So there will be no gray area at all.
Just a level of depersonalization. All right, Gentry's going to come down in like 5 minutes. He can come down a little sooner. Yeah, how do we tie this up? I mean, this is just such a compelling conversation, and I just know it's embedded, and I'm so excited for you to meet Gentry as well, because he just is another one of those warriors, who fought so courageously, but he's my why. He's in every sense of the word. Like when I wake up in the morning, when I think about building a better world, when I think about the work my nonprofit is doing, that's like when I think about my nonprofit. So our mission statement is to build compassionate communities for at-risk and underserved youth through mentorship. But I want to build communities that are so kind that my son could go to any one of them and be welcomed and treated with dignity and love and compassion. And I mean, certainly the stuff I see coming out of Washington does not reflect the world that I would like my son to grow up in. I mean, this world is cruel. This world is I mean, I just like it. Gosh, I've just continued to live with the words of our president. We called Tim Walz mentally retarded. Like that. God, that is the example that is flowing out of Washington right now. And we need an antidote to that, which is people who value dignity, people who value just love. And so that's like, I want these communities. I want to build them over and over and over and over again in Montana, where that's a testament to whether or not we're on target. If my son could show up to any one of them, because like my daughter is incredibly precocious. Like she's blonde haired, blue eye. I mean, she's beautiful. She's so smart, and she'll be able to knock down walls, but my son won't be able to do that. And so to me, that's my calling as a father. And I know my wife, who's a physician, I don't know if I mentioned that as well, but she's a hospitalist out here, and is just seeing the wrecking ball of what we're doing to our medical system, whether it's spreading disinformation or it's, defunding USAID, which is like, I mean, the consequences are just going to be absolutely devastating for global health. And these consequences are absolutely, like you think about tuberculosis or measles or any of these diseases that, boy, if we don't have a global mindset, like these things are coming back to the United States, and they're not going to come back, during Trump's administration or RFK Jr. I mean, hopefully we'll get rid of some of these people sooner than later, because their incompetence and arrogance is some of the most astounding that I've ever encountered. And I mean, just like RFK Jr., like he can't set policy because that has to go through a peer review process, right? And then doctors, actual professionals, will say, no, that does not reflect the scientific consensus. Like that's what they'll say that. But he can shift funding, and that's what he did. He just took millions and billions of dollars from literally like from cancer research, from pediatric cancer research, and so all of these patients. Under this eradication of cancer funding, like they were getting experimental treatments. This is the stuff that Madison would have been qualified for, that Gentry would have been qualified for, and just pulled all that funding. So those experiments, they just died, and all of those patients, very very likely did as well. And it's just like this just sweep of his pen. And all of a sudden, like all of these patients, like just lost their treatment, and I'm so angry about all of these things. And I'm so grateful that there are people that are willing to fight back.
I mean, that was my activation moment. I think people asked, why are you running? I said, it's not for my own health. I have no desire to be a politician. Never have. I've got young kids at home. I don't want to be on the road 6-7 days a week campaigning. But I think, we're doing it for them.
Yeah, because we have to. And I mean, I just appreciate that so much, Russ. All right. Hey, special guest. You gotta. Hey.
Hi.
Oh, no. Yeah. Can you say hi to some friends?
Hi.
Okay. Well, he has a very charming smile. But he's out of here. But I did want you to meet him.
Cute. Very cute.
Are you sure you don't want to say hi? Hi. Oh, there we go. Just say hi quick. There you go.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. I need
Uh-huh.
that.
Smile.
And Russ, I just want you to know that you have Gentry's full endorsement.
I love it.
In your
I love
campaign.
it.
That's a real endorsement.
That's a real endorsement right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Well,
is so
thank you guys so much for your time. Any final words just to kind of tie this up? And
I just would say, anyone that's watching or listening, just remember we're all human, and we're in this together. So we gotta look past the propaganda and the chaos, and start focusing on how we can actually help take care of one another again. I think we're long overdue. So
we are.
that's why I'm in this. I hope to start shifting the pendulum back the other way. We need it for parents like us, for kids like ours, for communities like ours, and we got to fight for it. It's not going to come easy.
No, it's not. Well, Kate, I'm going to give you the final word here, but also my thought as well is just that it's what this podcast is for. And if you get a chance to listen to some of the other people that I've interviewed, I'm looking for leaders who have taken their pain and turned it into purpose. Because this stuff that you've been through, like the stuff that I've been through, the stuff that it can just break you, right? Like it can shatter your. You talked about that moment in time where somebody came and changed your tire on the side of the road, right? And it restores your faith in humanity when it's feeling bleak and hopeless. And this stuff, I mean, the loss of Madison, like that it's so devastating that you just have two choices. Either you take it and you turn it into meaning, and you turn it into hope, and you turn it into purpose, or it does just break you. And so I'm so proud to be having this conversation with you, and so grateful for your leadership, and truly, Russ, look forward to supporting you in every way that I can. Which is, that is a long-term commitment, and I do have some ways that I can be an asset to what it is that you're doing.
Thank you so much. This is an absolute amazing experience to be a part of this with you, and we're part of the same fraternity, you know, as they say. We've been through hell and back together. So,
and Montana too. I mean, Montana is so cool. I love Montana.
absolutely. I think speaking to Russ, that having somebody come and help and change his tire, it didn't matter if that person was blue or red. It didn't matter that Russ was blue or red. It was about kindness and human to human interaction. Mm-hmm. And that's something that this country needs to get back to, is that we need to do what is best for our people, not what is self-serving. And I don't even know anymore. I think at the end of the day, Russ's campaign is about finding the common ground and opening those doors for communication and trying to leave this state a better place than what we received it in. So I think those would be my final words, and thank you for having us. I'm sorry that I couldn't formulate words at times. That's why I'm not the one running. I'm not the one great with words. I'm also the one that's more likely to swear and get pissed off. So I'm just the sidekick in this experiment.
I think we both know that's not true. So. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
really
all right. I love that idea of like putting human decency back on the ballot and making that part of the public dialogue. And then I think that you and I are probably in the same boat where we should, where our wives tell us to go, we should go, man. Our better halves. All right. Hey, thank you guys so much.
All right. Look forward to meeting you.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Pay Love Forward podcast. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you pause to reflect, don't let it in there. Pay Love Forward is more than a podcast. It's a movement, a community, a way of being. At its heart is a simple commitment to invest in others in ways that multiply. In partnership with Resilient Stories, we're committed to hearing the story within the story, the deeper narrative of courage, compassion, and renewal that reminds us who we are and what we're capable of together. If you'd like to walk with us, find a mentor, find a mentee, or join one of our community gatherings. You can connect through Facebook or visit www.payloveforward.net to learn more. Let's keep building something beautiful together.